And having said all of this, let's come to another important figure in the self-actualization theory or the humanist theory to personality classification and development. It's Carl Rogers. Now, first of all, Carl Rogers studied psychoanalysis before. Later on, he abandoned it. Because according to Carl Rogers, human beings are seen as basically rational and eminently capable of directing their behavior through reason and self-growth. Whereas for Freud, human behaviors are basically irrational, and they are driven by irrational and uncontrollable instincts, which lie outside the sphere of conscious awareness and are the ultimate cause of all activity. Now, this is the fundamental difference between Carl Rogers and Sigmund Freud. So Carl Rogers argues that personality development is not confined to early years of life. People grow toward self-actualization through the entire life course, experiencing ever greater complexity, autonomy, socialization, and maturity. You can see this in line with Alfred Adler and Abraham Maslow, and also is reflected in Csikszentmihalyi's studies as well. And Carl Rogers also argues that the major developmental concern is whether a person is free to grow, to be self-actualizing, or whether conditions of worsening cause a person to become defensive and operate out of a state of incongruence. Carl Rogers also draw ideas phenomenological approach. Phenomenological means you look at things from your own perspective. From Descartes, the French philosopher, okay, I see what I experience. So the phenomenological approach represents psychologists' efforts to come to terms with human experience as it occurs, rather than what is good or bad is not so much what you tell me, it's also what I experience for myself. So the phenomenological approach also addresses life as it is experienced by the person without splintering this experience into parts or reducing it to physiological principles. In such a way, the individual constructs the inner world of experience, and the construction reflects not only the outer world of reality, but also the inner world of personal needs, goals, beliefs, and growth. So, to compare phenomenological view with humanistic view, I have a very brief comparison. The phenomenological view emphasized on subjective perception of reality, the existential world, the feelings of authenticity, the positive human nature, and also acts of intellectual construction. Whereas for humanistic view, it emphasized the need for positive self-regard, need for self-actualization, need for recognition, need for self-congruence, and need for self-determination. So these are the differences. We all need positive regard, and this is the most important assumption of Carl Rogers. The self-regard including experiencing positive emotions like happiness, love, passion, compassion, empathy, and gratitude, and also positive traits like creativity, courage, optimism, confidence, humor, resilience, and altruism. And if you can cultivate these characters within yourself, you will get positive regard from others, and you can easily give out positive regard for others. Carl Rogers also talks a lot about self-consistency, meaning humans do not seek to gain pleasure or avoid pain as suggested by Freud. Humans try to organize values and function to preserve the self-system. Okay? And in pursuing positive regard from others, people may disregard or distort their experience of inner feelings and desires to make them feel accepted. And this is what Carl Rogers believed the self-congruence or self-consistency. And personality psychology is not about external measurable objects' behavior, it's about the inner experiences, which Carl Rogers emphasized a lot. And personality has a subjective quality, meaning interpreting the person who is having the experiences. Carl Rogers also advocated hermeneutical approach to study of personality. The hermeneutics is the style of explanation that resembles the style of thinking that we use when we read a novel. And Rogers suggests to interpret human actions within one's overall social context and inner experience, just like what phenomenological thinkers propose. And Rogers believes that humans construct one's subjective experiences by the moral and aesthetic standards they want to have. Let's get a quote from Carl Rogers himself. The expression of a positive regard by a significant social other can become so compelling that a person becomes more attuned to the positive regard of such others, that toward experiences which are of positive value in actualizing the organism. Basically, we want to pursue the self-positive regard and would do accordingly. Another quote from Carl Rogers is that life, at its best, is a flowing, changing process in which nothing is fixed. We can always rely on ourselves. And this is from his most famous book, On Becoming a Person. So according to Carl Rogers, the self is an aspect of phenomenological experience. It is one aspect of our experiences of the world, and is conscious to one's own motives to life. And the self-concept represents an organized and consistent pattern of perceptions. Although the self keeps changing, the self-concept always retains this patterned, integrated, organized quality. It's called self-congruence and self-consistency. So Carl Rogers used ideal self and actual self to describe what people are. And the closer the correspondence between the actual self and ideal self, the greater a person's sense of self-actualization and self-congruence and self-adjustment is. And Rogers emphasized the importance to a person's functioning of congruence between the self and experience, that is, between what a person feels and how they view themselves and experience the world. And this is a picture of what ideal self and actual self matters. And Carl Rogers possesses that the anxiety is a result of discrepancy between the experience and the perception of self. And the person, for example, believes that he or she never hates anyone but suddenly experiences hatred, will be anxious after becoming aware of the incongruence. So what is self-congruence after all? Carl Rogers suggests that people will try to bring together or make congruent what they feel with how they view themselves. The self-congruence is to seek the harmony between the self and experience, an experience that are congruent with the self-structure and perceived as threatening, and are either denied or distorted. The condition is known as the self-experience discrepancy of self-incongruence. And in a healthy person, there is a congruence between the self and experience, an openness to experience, and a lack of defensiveness. And a person can assimilate experiences into the self-structure. And what is self-congruence means after all? You have an actual self and ideal self. The actual self starts being shy, passive, hesitant, lazy, nervous, unsociable, dependent, and boring. And the ideal self is anything that is opposite: active, assertive, confident, courageous, decisive, disciplined, humorous, independent, relaxed, smart, sociable. And you work yourself on this, and some of these characters you have successfully obtained for yourself or actualized for yourself. The others, you still work on them, and eventually part of that ideal self becomes you. That includes being active, confident, courageous, decisive, disciplined, humorous, independent, and sociable. Okay, it becomes more mature and more charismatic and more sociable as such, and you continue to work on other qualities to assimilate into your self-structure, and this is called the process of self-congruence. Carl Rogers also said, "I've always tried to be what other people thought I should be, but now I'm wondering whether I shouldn't just see that I am what I am." So this is the experiential or phenomenological view of self. Eventually, you would fulfill other expectations in some regard. In other regards, you keep your own identity. Okay? Having said all of this, let's hear Carl Rogers' speech on self-regard. Okay? And we have this questions in mind. And let's hear what he say.
I held an interview with a young man in South Africa. I didn't know anything about him. It turned out he was an officer in the South African Army. Now, for me, that meant it meant that I stretched my empathic abilities to their very limit to try to be with him, to try to understand him, to try to be caring toward him. I didn't feel I did too well. And yet, I've learned since that interview really changed the course of his life. So I feel that if I can be genuinely understanding, try to listen not only to the words but to the meaning, trying to understand the person that's hidden within each one of us, that's helpful. If I really care about this person in an unconditional way, that's helpful. If I can really be myself in the relationship, not a professional expert, not a, quote, psychologist, not a psychotherapist, just me in that relationship, that's helpful. All those things are possible, and when they come together, that creates a very powerful climate for change, for growth, for drawing out the potential of the client.
Now you've heard it, and you can see how empowering, how charismatic Carl Rogers speaks for self-congruence and self-regard. We all need it. And Carl Rogers also said, "I do not know when I will die, but I do know that I will have lived a full and exciting 85 years. And he did that. He died as a fulfilled, actualized, happy man. We should all look forward to Carl Rogers for his attitudes to life.